Yes, well, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Uh, Patsy, I was going to call on you to give us a report from your groundhog. Do you have any good news for us from your Sun Prairie groundhog? No. Yay, so early spring, so we've got something to celebrate. Uh, and before we begin our study, Jim is going to lead us in a word of
Lord our God, we thank you for this day you've given us, the chance that we can once again come here together and study your word as a family. Lord, please be with our teacher, that he has the thoughts and the words that he's looking for to help express the message of your words. Lord, it's through your Son that we pray. Amen.
Today we're going to be looking at Nehemiah chapter 6 and 7. Next week we'll be looking at chapters 8 and 9 of Nehemiah. And we've been looking at the opposition that the Jews have faced in rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, led by Nehemiah. We looked at the external opposition. They've had mockery, harassment for what they're doing. Then they had actual physical threats. And so they ended up, Nehemiah comes up with a solution. Half of them at a time are standing armed and ready to protect those who are working. Nehemiah himself is part of the solution. A trumpeter stays near him so that they can rally and go to whatever area might be attacked. Also, they have actually started living in the city, so there's a presence 24 hours a day to protect the wall and to keep the work going. So here we have that physically the people are being drawn together, and that they have to have each other's backs to prevent these violent attacks. Last week we looked at more of an internal problem, that as the people come to Nehemiah with an outcry, there are people that their families are not being fed, their homes and vineyards and fields are being taken by fellow members of their Jewish community, that people just in order to buy food and pay taxes have had to put mortgages on their property, and the wealthy and the leaders have been taking advantage of this, actually taking their lands away, and also the people have been forced to put their children into slavery. And Nehemiah's response to this is to rebuke the wealthy, and in public assembly call on them to obey the law of Moses, that they're to lend generously to their brother and not charge interest on this. And then there is a restoration by the wealthy to the others. So we see an internal challenge, or excuse me, an external challenge, an internal challenge dealt with by Nehemiah. And again, we're seeing some unity building as they have each other's back physically in protecting each other, as they have to take their turn protecting each other as they work, and then also internally as they're taking care of each other economically. Today we're going to look at a third threat, and this threat is personal to Nehemiah himself, as they've seen that what is being accomplished under his leadership. Jesse, I was going to ask you to read in the first 9 verses of Nehemiah chapter 6.
Now when it was reported to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, the Arab, that the rest of the enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and that no breach remained in it, although at that time I had not set up the doors and the gates. Then Sanballat and Geshem sent a message to me saying, "Come, let us meet together at Shechem in the plain of Ono." But they were planning to harm me. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? They sent messengers to me 4 times in this manner, and I answered them in the same way. Then Sanballat sent his servant to me in the same manner a 5th time with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, it is the reported among the nations, and Geshem says that you and the Jews are planning to rebel. Therefore, you are rebuilding the wall, and you are to be their king according to their reports. You have also appointed prophets to proclaim in Jerusalem concerning you. A king is in Judah, and now it will be reported to the king according to these reports. So come now, let us take counsel together. Then I sent a messenger to them saying, such things as you are saying have not been done, and you are inventing them in your own mind. For all of them were trying to frighten us, thinking they will become discouraged in the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands.
Okay, so here we see him to personally attack Nehemiah, and they've made good progress on the wall. In fact, the wall is complete. It just says that the gates, the doors need to be hung. And of course, wall isn't much good if you have open gates everywhere. But this stimulates Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, who the little triumvirate that we've been following right along, that they've been attempting to stop the building. In fact, they're the ones that are behind the violent threats that have been made against them. They've also been continually sending information back to Susa, the capital of Persia, against them. So it's very duplicitous of them. So, and of course, Sanballat, reminder, is the governor of Samaria, which is to the north. Tobiah is an Ammonite official, which is off to the east of the Jordan. And then Geshem is Arab, and these peoples are located to the south, so that these are surrounding enemies, and of course they're also within Judah, within Judah itself. It's getting serious now. Things are almost completed. It's like, what can we do to stop them? So it says, so they approach him, and of course with the idea, oh, we're going to be helpful now. Come and meet with us. You know, there's some things occurring. We can help you with this. And of course, at this point, you wonder, how did they think Nehemiah is going to trust them? You know, after they've tried so many things. And what is Nehemiah's answer to them when it says that they sent to him 4 times to come down and meet with them?
Busy.
Yeah, he said he's too busy. And of course, it's not just, you know, doing the work of God. It's that he's had letters. He's had to, from Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, directing this to be done. It's not something they're just doing on their own. And of course, then a 5th time, they're more clear about, why they want to meet with him. And they point out in this letter, what did they accuse him of? And of course, we see Christ being accused of the same thing in this open.
Wanting to be king.
Right, wanting to be king. And it's interesting. It says it's an open letter. So that means whoever can read it or hear this. But saying that, we're hearing now, and it's being reported all among the people all around you, that you're actually rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem because you plan to rebel, that you, Nehemiah, are going to declare yourself king, and you're even having prophets proclaiming this. We need to talk about this because we want to, we're going to help you out. And again, he says, he replies to him very strongly and saying, this is not true. You know it's not true, and that you're inventing this. And of course, it's interesting. We see that politics don't change very, very much over the years. What do we see? We just finished a season of all these political ads, and all the ads are accusing somebody of something else. Many times they're half-truths or expansions, but again, the idea that you portray something and you've invented the claim in the first place, and it can be very hard to deny. It's interesting that Nehemiah goes ahead and dismisses this. He doesn't stop to argue with them or stop to send delegations to all these surrounding nations. He continues the work. And it reminds me of what was said earlier when they first started to work on the walls, that the people had a mind to work. And continually through this, he's been working, that he has a mind to work and get the mission done, but also to keep the people, to keep their morale up so that they also have a mind to finish this. And of course, in all this, he's trusting to God. We see him constantly. He turns to God and prays about the situation before he acts. He also indicates that they have been just trying to frighten him into stopping, and maybe the people who are working on the wall are kind of held back and say, well, if we continue this work, we're going to be considered rebels. We're going to get in trouble. And of course, Nehemiah, by his words and his actions, assures them that they do not need to be afraid. And we actually see him turning and praying to God for strength to keep going. And of course, you can't help but know one of their motives in having him come and meet with them was it'd be a chance to kill him. And it means that there are also other death threats that could happen to him, but he keeps going regardless. Anyone have comments or thoughts about this passage? Yeah, Josh?
I also think as we were reading through this, to your point about how the slander and different things even happens today, most of the time once that's happened, there's not that much I can do if it was against me other than just say, this isn't true, and keep going with what I know I need to be doing, right? The people who are going to believe that without checking into it have already heard it and believe that. And so I think it's a good example of how we should handle when that might happen to us. So.
And turning and praying to God.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking of this, I know this has happened to me in the workplace, and I'm sure it's happened to you, that things were invented just because someone wanted to take you down or get you in trouble. And of course, sometimes just being the Christian in the workplace, I know John has talked about this in his work. I don't know if you have any comments about that. I don't know if you've had anyone in for you or otherwise, or just because they know what your background is. Oh.
Trying to get done, but where I'm at now, everybody's pretty okay with, the people that know what I used to be a preacher. Everybody's pretty okay with it. And sometimes people, profanity is just like everywhere, but they'll slip and say something. Oh, sorry. So stuff like that. It's kind of being respectful, I think, in their case.
And I know I found in the case in the workplace, if you're just consistent in showing your values, that consistency has an impact over time, because some people are just saying, oh, well, here's someone who professes to be a Christian. We got to trip them up. They got to be a hypocrite. And of course, people misunderstand sometimes even coming to church, that why we assemble together. Yes.
Sometimes you don't even know what's happening. I had a class, and there was a student in there that she never really spoke to me. Some students you get along with better than others, but then one day, out of the blue, I just got an email from her. She goes, I take it that you are a woman who prays. And her mom was sick, and she asked me to pray for her. And I mean, I didn't expect that from her, you know, but she had seen that and you know, this was not a Christian school, so, you know, we weren't allowed to, you know, to go on and on about our faith or anything. And she still saw that somehow. So I thought that was a good thing. So sometimes it sneaks, you know, you're doing it maybe, you know, without ringing a bell or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's it, and I've had that happen to me too, and I know others that, you know, when somebody's in trouble, they come and talk to you, or even in some cases ask you to pray for them, and even though they may have been people who mocked and kind of ridiculed you when they first met you, but they see your consistency, that you didn't retaliate when you had a chance to do something, you know, bad in return or to gossip about them. I was thinking about even our worship service. I know that, you know, some of my colleagues, we used to meet in libraries all over the 7-county area. And I heard some of the library staff talking one morning before we met, and they were talking about people who went to church on Sunday. And they just couldn't understand it. They thought that, well, people went to church so that they could pat themselves on the back and kind of look down on everybody else and say, well, I'm good and they're bad. But it's kind of interesting to see some people's take on things. And of course, you know, it's something you can have a discussion about and say, well, no, I'm going to church because it's more like a Sinners Anonymous. It's a support group. You know, we're building each other up and we're learning and increasing our faith. It's not to put everybody else down. But anyway, that's honest misunderstanding. We know in this case, the three that are after them are just trying to trip him up and kill him. Yeah, Baxter.
Just applying this to a church setting, I was thinking, reading through this, I think I've learned through the years that when somebody comes to the preacher or the elders and says, people are talking, and this thing needs to change, generally, it's usually that guy and his mom. So like the first few times, that's kind of concerning, like, oh no, everybody's talking, but in reality, no, it's not. And you really kind of need to get back to work on a lot of those things.
That's when you need to say, well, bring them in. That's when you talk to them.
Let's go see him.
Yeah, when you get back to work on the wall, you know, it's kind of the response.
Right. Well, yeah, you need to get on with the work. You don't need to handle this distraction. And we're going to kind of pursue this in the next passage too, where we see there is some internal treachery going on as well. It's not just these external threats, but even within the Jewish community, people are being traitors and trying to undermine things. And of course, you know, as a couple of you just mentioned, that to actually be in a congregation or a body of Christians, to be undermining each other, attacking, that, you know, how bad this is. Silas, I promised you'd get to read, so Kenneth would get a break. Can you read verses 10 through 14 of 6, in Nehemiah 6?
When I entered the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of, etc., who was confined at home, he said, let's meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let's close the doors of the temple, for they're coming to kill you, and they're coming to kill you at night. But I said, should a man like me flee? And who is there like me who would go into the temple to save his own life? I will not go in. Then I realized that God certainly had not sent him, but he uttered his prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He was hired for this reason, that I would become frightened and act accordingly in sin, so that they might have an evil report in order that they could taunt me. Remember, my God, Tobiah and Sanballat, in accordance with these works of theirs, and also Noadiah the prophetess and the rest of the prophets who are trying to frighten me.
Okay, so what's the problem here? I mean, he's got Shemaiah who's coming and actually giving him a warning. I mean, it's going to save his life. Why is this a treacherous act?
Only the priests that could go in, so once they could get him to do that, then they thought God would punish him.
Okay, he's violating the temple. Anything else that Is this undermining his credibility? That, oh, good. Did you have a comment, or? Oh, yeah, Stuart.
His faith in God should make him believe that God would let this happen to him.
Well, he's showing his lack of trust. He's been telling them to be out on the wall working daily where they might get an arrow in the back and, doing all these other things. And then he's going to go into hiding and then actually, as Jesse said, violate the temple and lock himself away. And then, of course, he's found out that apparently there's an implication here that there's some prophesying going on too, that this may happen, and that, we're sharing this is from God, that you need to do this. And of course he realizes this isn't true. And again, we see him turning to God and praying for him. And he's, of course, he's praying against these enemies, that these things can be defeated, because now he knows, they're hidden people against him. They're the outsiders, but now this is within the Jewish community that they're going to hear and try to trick him. And of course, this deals with what I said we just talked about within a congregation. You can have people giving you advice that is not good advice. That maybe you're taking steps to protect yourself when you should be showing that God is with us, and we're going to go ahead and do these things despite the opposition. Any comments on Shemaiah? Okay, well then let's go ahead and read the good news ahead in verses 15 through 19. Baxter.
Verse 14, that Nehemiah is praying almost like for something bad to happen to those people. Like, he doesn't say it outright, but, through this book a few times Nehemiah has said, "Remember me, oh my God." Like, he was a little self-conscious, I don't know. He wanted to please God above everything, but here he's praying on behalf of these people who are trying to pull him away from his work. He's just kind of leaves that in God's hands. Remember them.
Yeah, well, he is kind of praying that, do unto them as they're plotting to do unto others. So that this type thing. But it kind of reminds us too, it must be very hard, or it can be hard to pray for people that are our enemies. And of course we're praying for good things, but we're also praying that we can survive, whatever attacks are done, and that justice be served. So, yeah, good point. Let's look at verses 15 through 19. Shelby, you haven't read in a while. Chapter 6, verses 15 through 19.
So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Era, and his son Jehohanan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, as his wife. Also they spoke of his good deeds in my presence, and reported my words to him. And Tobiah sent letters to make me afraid.
Okay, well, good news. The wall is completed. The gates are hung. And of course, it's amazing because it seems like, this has been going on forever. And it says this is accomplished in 52 days. And of course, this is an incredible accomplishment with all the opposition that has been going on. And it shows that Nehemiah is justified in keeping his mind on the work, on the task that needs to be done, and keeping the people's minds on this, that the Jews in restoring this. What's the reaction of the people all around when they finish this, and they've done it in less than 2 months? The people of the land. How did Right. This, and of course, this is something that you may not directly think about, but by accomplishing these things, and it's one thing they talked about why they were going to essentially rebuild Jerusalem, is it would remove reproach. There was reproach upon God because people would say, well, your God, your city lies in ruins. You have not been restored. You know, what kind of God are you serving? But it says they actually are in fear because this seems like a amazing accomplishment, especially when we remember some of the descriptions we heard of when they first started out. I mean, they got discouraged because there was so much rubble that had to be removed as well as the rebuilding. So of course this is something that discourages their enemies, but also encourages the people of Judah, the Jews that have returned from captivity. Does this remove all the opposition then? What does it say at the end here? What other opposition continues from our good friend Tobiah? Okay, letters are continuing. And of course, we learn here one of the reasons that Ezra has spoken up against the intermarriage, that they're getting these letters. These nobles have relationships with Tobiah, this Ammonite who has been attacking things. So things have been going on internally. Letters have been going back and forth. And of course, through Tobiah and these nobles, letters are also going to Nehemiah, which are threatening, and also there have been letters praising Tobiah like he's someone great when Nehemiah knows that he's behind so many efforts to stop the progress and even have the Jews killed as they were working on the wall. And of course, we see him. We see Nehemiah praying about this as well. But again, even though he kind of dealt with some things, there's still some stuff internally going on, and there's still threats to him. And yet, Nehemiah will continue to be faithful and move ahead because, as we read in the next passage, the work is not done. The walls may be completed, the doors may be up, but Jerusalem has not been repopulated. And of course, when we read at the beginning of the rebuilding, we saw that different families and groups of people worked on different parts of the wall and gates who were expected to inhabit those sections. But homes, businesses, marketplaces have to still be restored in Jerusalem. So let's go ahead and read. Kelly, can I get you to read in Nehemiah 7, the first 5 verses?
Now it came about when the wall was rebuilt, and I had set up the doors, and the gatekeepers and the singers and the Levites were appointed, that I put Benaiah my brother and Hananiah the commander of the fortress in charge of Jerusalem, for he was a faithful man and feared God more than many. Then I said to them, do not let the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they are standing guard, let them shut and bolt the doors. Also appoint guards from the inhabitants of Jerusalem, each at his post, and each in front of his own house. Now the city was large and spacious, but the people in it were few, and the houses were not built. Then my God put into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the people to be enrolled by genealogies. Then I found the book of genealogy of those who came up first, in which I found the following record.
And I don't know if Ken is really ambitious. He can read the following record, but I think I'm going to leave that in the realm of read that on your own. So what happens as soon as the Jerusalem is finished? Are all their threats gone? Okay, Josh is shaking his head. No. Okay, yeah. No, they continue to face threats, and of course we learn here that Nehemiah's brother, who in a way started the whole thing because he came back to Susa in Persia with a report of how desolate Jerusalem continued to be and how desperate the situation was of the people, that and then caused Nehemiah then to have his discussion with the king of Persia, which led to all this being done. But anyway, he appoints his brother. It indicates some of his other brothers are there as well, but he appoints his brother to be in charge of Jerusalem. So he's delegating now, and of course we have to remember that Nehemiah has been appointed governor, sometime in the proceedings to be governor of the whole province of Judah. So he's putting this in his brother's hand. It said he's putting things in people's hands who fear God. He's looking at those who are faithful and fear God to put in charge. I mean, maybe some of the nobles and the leaders of the people that have been so treacherous would have liked to have thought, well, we put us in charge because this is prestigious. And it says that they even continue to put guards throughout the city because of these concerns. And of course, it direct them too about opening and closing the gates so that they're protecting who comes in, so these surrounding peoples that are enemies cannot sneak in among them. Why do you think they comment on the city being so large and the people being so few? I don't know, Kelly, you're a realtor, or we're
Well,
what do you do at the city that has a lot of empty places?
I would think that probably the word hasn't gotten out yet that it's safe to live there yet. I mean, the wall was just finished, right? So
Right.
maybe I don't know it's safe to move my family there. I would need that reassurance before I would move.
So having all these guards and whatnot are going to help. Also encouraging people to move back. And of course, we're going to see that next week when you look at chapter 8 and Ezra reads the law among the people, it's because they have gathered back. They have gathered back in the city. And of course, he goes ahead and has this genealogy read. And this I might pick on John, who may not have an idea either. Why does he go back to this genealogy of the people who returned with Zerubbabel? I mean, this is over 70 years ago.
It's important that we're bringing people that are connected to, the earliest generations. And part of the trouble with some of the intermarriages and so forth was there were people that they couldn't show their genealogy, they couldn't track their genealogy, so they weren't sure if they were, quote, pure Israelites or not. So that's a lot of it is kind of provenance of who should be there, who shouldn't be there.
Yeah, so you're trying to kind of tracking the people who moved back so you don't end up having the same internal treachery. And by checking back, it's the people who have returned from captivity and have returned because they did fear God, they did trust God, they have been faithful. Just as his brother and others that he appointed to be in charge of the city, that was the main measure of faithfulness and fear of God, that the people who are being back are going to be people who are connected or are going to be faithful. And of course, that means that the worship of God is going to be fully restored, and the people will be faithful to God, so that the promises he made to them, even back in Egypt, are going to be fulfilled. As they're faithful to him, he's going to be faithful in his promises. I don't know, any closing comments? I know we're getting kind of early. Yes, Michaela.
Also, as it is explained further down towards 64, there was also a matter of trying to figure out who can serve in the temple too, to get some of these restorative worship getting back on, and there was some dispute because there had been intermarriages about who can actually do that job, and they had to go back to the genealogy, and somebody was told, no, you can't until we can get some further information, because it looks like this is not a true bloodline of somebody who could do this work. So I think some of it, when there aren't very many people, there's a massive amount of work to be done. They're also analyzing what resources do we have and who can serve in what, as we're getting all of these services back to what they should have been.
Oh, good, yeah, good point. Well, and even when they were leaving to come, I mean, originally back in the time of Zerubbabel, when the people were leaving to come back to Judah, there was a big emphasis on the Levites, and that they had to be able to clearly trace their lineage, so that even the Levites that came back, they were checking their genealogies and their backgrounds. The ones who could not fully trace everything did more of the secular functions and could not, serve fully as priests. So it's a good point. They're sticking to this here too. And of course, more than 70 years have passed, so that even the people who have come back, some of them have intermarried and created problems. And of course, we're going to see Ezra addressing this intermarriage problem again later in the scripture. I mean, he already addressed it at the end of the book in the book of Ezra. But yeah, good point. So how do we deal with, just looking at this lesson then, how do we deal with opposition round about us? I mean, in this country, it seems like it's relatively mild, but how would we handle things if we are being, actually harassed, mocked for our beliefs, actually physically threatened, or even in internal matters? We might have a case where the people up front here have lent everybody money and demand it back and take all our homes and houses. Sorry to pick on you guys. Or that, a congregation is not really treating each other the way they should, and there might even be internal gossiping and division among different groups of people. Just from this lesson, seeing how Nehemiah handled things, how do we handle things? Yeah.
Group and go fight it. He prayed to God and continued to do what he was doing. So it's not a matter of causing a division within the group. He just kept doing what he was doing and prayed to God to take care of it. So that's one thing.
Well, yeah, good point. Forge ahead. I always think of that when we partake of the Lord's Supper each Sunday. It's a time to refocus on Christ, refocus on what our lives should actually be directed towards. It's not directed towards getting even, or being a success, or putting others down. It's to increase our faith in our relationship with God and trust in Him. I know I took my first job where I was in charge of an institution, and I actually took the job, which just seemed like a crazy reason, because I saw so many things that needed to be done. And of course, you don't realize when you go, there's not only external opposition, but there's internal opposition. And some of it you find out over time that, and I actually had people tell me, we like our library the way it is, and we don't want to change anything. And the thing is, you have to not retaliate, but you have to keep going and do what you know that needs to be done. It seems like a lot of it is confirmed over time as things are done which actually make things better, and people can see that. But also working with people so that they change their focus from, oh, we got this little happy community and we don't care about anybody else, to actually performing your mission, which in our case was customer service, starting to worry about the people that come in, not in feathering our own nests. Anyone else have personal experiences? I know Baxter and John have, in congregations, have each had trouble with this, and it seems like a continuing problem in congregations. It seems like things will start going well, and then you you will have factions, or you'll have muttering and complaining about people. It's like, oh, Stuart never talks to me, that, and oh, I see Kelly over there. She must be talking about me behind my back, and it can get to be, or, I have this problem and no one sympathized, that, can create divisions. Yeah, John.
Jesse was saying, you get involved in something like that, you have to, before anything else, be sure that you're doing what's right.
Mhm.
And, you can't play the game and start to fight back and, round up your own group and that kind of thing. It's counterproductive, especially in a church setting. So you have to be right and be authentic. I think that's one of the big lessons from Nehemiah. He kept his focus and he kept doing the thing that he was there for, that God sent him there for, he kept doing it. And he didn't give them any ammunition to use against him.
Well, or real ammunition, they could always invent
they were making
things.
stuff up.
And of course, this is a point too. Our Nehemiah has a personal relationship with the king of Persia, with Artaxerxes, because he had served him. And so he's got this extra trust there, that when these letters continually come back saying Nehemiah is doing this and this, that, and the other, that they realize, well, I know this guy, he's true. And I'm sure Nehemiah's governor was sending the reports back, and of course, Persia was concerned that, of course, Artaxerxes had sent a decree sending Ezra back to restore the worship of God, with the idea that the God of the Israelites would not be upset with him, and also that they would be praying for him, that as they restored this worship. But overall, of course, Persia would have been concerned about, well, we want peace in that province, and we want our tribute coming in on a regular basis. So they're judging on that, plus knowing Nehemiah, and then knowing the situation he's had to deal with to recover things. But it can be hard with us, sometimes in our daily lives, and working and keeping our eyes on the mission. We see Nehemiah too constantly turning to God in prayer. He prays about things before he acts, and it seems like he prays about things too when he's challenged or attacked. That sometimes we think of prayer as a last resort, and it should actually be our first and last resort. Any other comments before we close in prayer? Yeah.
As you were saying that, it's also interesting to me, I think sometimes, we can look at everybody external to the church is bad, but like you were talking about, with Artaxerxes and how Nehemiah had the relationship that he did, right? Sometimes, and it was very likely God behind the scenes helping that out, but sometimes our assistance for this congregation might come from an external place. And so we shouldn't always just be oh, we're part of the Four Lakes congregation, and there might be something in the city of Madison that can help us or whatever. And we have to be careful about that, just with what you talked about with the intermarrying and things like that. But I think I found myself in the past being oh, is it okay to accept external help or something versus accept the congregation? So that was the thought that came to me.
Okay. Yeah, Baxter.
Based on what Josh says, it kind of reminds me of how Paul relied on the Roman Empire. There was that time when he was about to he was stretched out, and the guy had his hand raised with the whip, basically, and Paul, just paraphrasing here, said, oh, by the way, did you know I'm a Roman? And so he was using that relationship with Rome to his advantage, and that's kind of what Nehemiah did. And when Nehemiah had that close relationship with the king, there are a whole lot of things that didn't really matter. Mm-hmm. People can come and accuse you of all kinds of stuff, but if the king's got your back, you're going to be okay.
Right. Well, and of course, the thing is, this has been continuous since the time of Zerubbabel. They talked about, even back then, they were hiring counselors. And Artaxerxes, at one point in the past, has ordered work to cease on the wall. I mean, this is before Ezra and Nehemiah. And then he reverses that when Nehemiah is sent out. And when he's gotten this report, or he's seen Nehemiah, someone he personally knows that is affected by what's happening in Jerusalem. That's also a point that Nehemiah was governor, and in such he was serving his capacity in Persia, a non-Jewish kingdom, but he is faithful in accomplishing those tasks. I mean, he was not looking to build up Jerusalem so they could rebel and they're going to become this great kingdom like there was Solomon. He's concerned about serving God. The purpose in Ezra and Nehemiah coming back is to restore worship, restore the people in their relationship with God. And of course, we keep forgetting that when they're rebuilding the walls, they're also protecting the temple. The temple had been open to being attacked or raided again. On that point, and next week we're going to be looking at Nehemiah 8 and 9, and I've already promised Kenna that I'm not going to make her read the entire law. Baxter looked up online when he said that when online it said if you read orally the law, which are the first 5 books, the Pentateuch, that it would take 10 to 12 hours. So. But anyway, let's close with John Palmer and lead us in prayer.
Father, thank you for the time we've had to be together to study and to discuss. We pray, Father, you'll help us remember the lessons of Nehemiah from today's lesson specifically. Help us in all of our endeavors, especially as Christians in the world, to maintain our focus and to be faithful in every situation. Father, help us to do what's right and to represent you the best way that we can by being honest and transparent and authentic in all that we do. Be with us as we continue through the morning. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.